I was sitting on our bed when her second phone hit the floor. She was rushing around getting ready for work, pulling clothes from drawers, checking her makeup in the mirror. The small black device slipped out of her gym bag and landed near my feet. She didn't notice. She was too busy humming some song I'd never heard her hum before. I picked it up. No case, no scratches. Clean, anonymous. While the shower ran in the bathroom, I turned it on. No password. That's how arrogant she'd become. The screen lit up with messages from someone named Brady. I didn't need to scroll far. 3 months of hotel rooms. 3 months of lies about late nights at the office. 3 months of my wife living a life I knew nothing about. The texts were explicit, detailed, shameless. They talked about me like I was a problem to solve, an obstacle between them and whatever future they'd imagined together. I sat there holding the evidence of everything falling apart, and something inside me went quiet. Not broken, quiet. For the first time in months, maybe years, I understood exactly what I was dealing with. I memorized Brady's number, took photos of the most damning messages, then powered the phone down and placed it back exactly where it had fallen. When she came out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, I was scrolling through the news on my own phone like nothing had happened. "Coffee's ready," I said without looking up. "Thanks, babe." She kissed my cheek, the same cheek she'd kissed yesterday before meeting him at some downtown hotel. I felt nothing. No rage, no heartbreak, just cold, perfect clarity. That's when I decided to play a different game. Not the one she expected. Not the wounded husband. Not the emotional wreck. I would play chess while she played checkers, and I would win before she even realized the match had started. Over the next 2 weeks, I became someone else. Not suspicious, not jealous, just observant. I started building a file. Every receipt she left in her purse. Every charge on our joint credit card for restaurants I'd never been to. Flowers I'd never seen. Hotels in cities I'd never visited. I took screenshots when she left her real phone unlocked on the counter. I documented her schedule, her lies, her patterns. The folder on my laptop grew thick with evidence, organized by date and category. But I needed something more secure than digital files. Something she couldn't access if she discovered what I was doing. That's when I remembered my grandfather's safe deposit box. When he died 2 years ago, he left me $500,000. She knew about the money, knew it was invested and growing. What she didn't know was that he'd also left me his old box at First National Bank. I'd never mentioned it, never used it, never put it on any joint paperwork. It existed in a space outside our marriage, invisible and secure. I spent a Saturday afternoon at the bank while she was working late with her team. I organized everything methodically, printed screenshots of her conversations with Brady, hotel receipts showing dates and locations, credit card statements highlighting charges for their affair, restaurant bills, flowers, gifts that never made it home. I even included a USB drive with digital copies of everything. When I was done, the box contained a complete timeline of her betrayal, impossible to deny or explain away. But the most important thing I added was a letter, handwritten, dated, witnessed by the bank officer helping me that day. In it, I detailed exactly what I knew, when I discovered it, and what I planned to do. I sealed it and placed it on top of everything else. Walking out of that bank, I felt lighter than I had in months. She thought she was playing me. She had no idea I was already 10 steps ahead. That night, she made dinner and talked about her day. She mentioned working late again tomorrow, something about a big presentation. I nodded and smiled, already knowing Brady had booked them a room at the Hampton Inn. "That's great, sweetheart," I said, cutting into my steak. "I'm proud of how hard you're working." She beamed at me, probably thinking about how easy I was to fool. If she only knew that while she was at that hotel tomorrow, I'd be meeting with a divorce attorney. 3 weeks went by before she made her move on the money. I'd been expecting it. The affair was getting expensive. New clothes, fancy dinners, weekend trips that cost more than her salary. She needed access to my inheritance, and she thought she was clever enough to get it. "We should talk about our finances," she said over breakfast on a Friday. "You know, plan for the future." I buttered my toast slowly. "What kind of planning?" "Well, you've got all that money from your grandfather just sitting there. Maybe we should consolidate everything into joint accounts. Make it easier to manage." There it was, the opening move. I'd been waiting for this exact conversation. "The investments are doing fine where they are," I said. "Why mess with something that's working?" Her smile tightened just slightly. "It's not about messing with anything. It's about trust. We're married. We should have access to everything together." I nodded like I was considering it. "You're probably right. Let me think about it." That afternoon, while she was actually at the Marriott downtown with Brady, I'd placed a small GPS tracker in her car weeks ago. I met with Ashton Blackwell. He was everything you'd want in a divorce attorney. Sharp, experienced, completely immune to sad stories. His reputation for handling high-asset divorces was exactly what I needed. "Adultery with documentation," he said, reviewing the flash drive I'd brought. "Financial infidelity, attempted fraud. This is about as clean as it gets." "She's going to try for my inheritance," I told him. "I expect it'll escalate soon." Ashton leaned back in his chair. "Let her. The more aggressive she gets, the better it looks for us. Judges don't appreciate spouses trying to grab assets while conducting affairs." We spent an hour mapping out strategy. The paperwork was ready to file whenever I gave the word. My inheritance was completely protected. Separate property acquired after marriage through inheritance with no commingling of marital funds. She had zero legal claim to it. But I wasn't ready to file yet. I wanted to see how far she'd push. I wanted her fully committed to this path before I responded. The following Monday, she tried a different approach. She'd clearly done research over the weekend, probably with Brady's help. "I've been thinking about what we discussed," she said, cornering me in the kitchen. "About the inheritance money. Keeping everything separate isn't fair to our marriage." "How so?" "We've been married for years. I've supported your career, taken care of our home, been your partner in everything. That money should benefit both of us." The irony was stunning. She was giving me a speech about partnership while actively cheating on me. But I kept my face neutral. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "Put it in both our names. 50-50 ownership. That's how real partnerships work." I sipped my coffee, pretending to consider this. "That's a big step." "It's the right step." Her voice had an edge now. "Unless you don't trust me." The manipulation was almost beautiful. Question my trust while actively betraying it. "I do trust you," I lied. "Let me talk to my financial advisor about the best way to handle it." Her face lit up with triumph. She thought she'd won. That evening, she was particularly affectionate, probably celebrating her perceived victory. The performance was impressive. Wednesday morning brought a new development. "I've been thinking," she said. Maybe we should cut through the red tape. You could add me to your safe deposit box access. That way I can help manage the important documents. I nearly choked on my orange juice. She was fishing for information about where I kept assets, but she just walked straight into my trap. Safe deposit box? I asked innocently. What's safe deposit box? She backpedaled quickly. I just assumed. Most people keep important documents in safe deposit boxes. The inheritance paperwork, investment documents, that sort of thing. I keep everything digital now, I said. Easier to access and back up. I could see the frustration in her eyes. She was trying to map out my assets, probably planning her divorce strategy with Brady. They wanted to know exactly what was available to grab. Over the next week, her questions became more direct. Specific bank names, investment firms, document storage. Each question told me more about her timeline. She was planning to file within the month. This wasn't just an affair anymore. It was a carefully orchestrated cash grab disguised as marital dissolution. Friday afternoon, Ashton called with news I'd been expecting. Your wife contacted a law firm downtown, Wall & Associates. They specialize in high-asset divorce cases. When? This morning. She's scheduled for a consultation next week. I smiled to myself in my empty office. Perfect timing. Should I file our papers? Ashton asked. Not yet. Let her make the first move. I want her to commit fully before I respond. Because the truth was, I wanted her to file first. I wanted her to walk into court demanding half of everything, confident in her strategy, believing her affair gave her leverage somehow. I wanted her completely invested in this plan before she discovered that the safe deposit box she was so curious about wasn't hiding money. It was hiding something far more dangerous to her. Evidence that would destroy not just her divorce case, but her entire carefully constructed lie. The consultation happened on a Tuesday. She took a half-day off work, told me she was getting her hair done. The GPS trackers showed her parked outside the law firm for 2.5 hours. That evening, she was unusually quiet over dinner. When someone spends months living a double life, they develop tells. She got this distant look when she was processing something complicated, usually while planning her next move. Everything all right? I asked. Just tired from work, she said, pushing food around her plate. This new campaign is draining. The new campaign was Brady, but I nodded sympathetically. Maybe you should take some time off. We could afford a vacation. Her eyes sharpened at the mention of money. Actually, that brings up something I wanted to discuss. I've been thinking more about our financial planning conversation. Here we go, I thought. What about it? I spoke with someone today, a financial advisor. She was lying smoothly now, practiced at deception. They said married couples should have complete transparency about assets. It protects both parties. Makes sense. The thing is, they mentioned that sometimes people keep assets hidden from their spouses. Bank accounts, safe deposit boxes, investments that only one person knows about. She was watching my face carefully. They said it's more common than people think. I took a slow bite of my salmon. That would be terrible for a marriage. Exactly. That's why I think we should do a complete financial inventory. List everything we each have, combine what makes sense, make sure we're both protected. The manipulation was getting sophisticated. She wasn't just asking for access anymore. She was implying I might be hiding things from her while simultaneously hiding an entire relationship from me. You're probably right, I said. How would that work? Relief washed over her face. We'd each make a list. Bank accounts, investment accounts, Any safe deposit boxes or storage units, insurance policies, everything. Then we'd decide together how to structure things for maximum benefit. She'd clearly gotten coaching from Wall and Associates. This was textbook asset discovery disguised as marital improvement. "I like that idea," I said. "Transparency is important." Over the next week, she became obsessed with this financial inventory project. She'd bring it up constantly, over coffee, during walks, while watching television. The pressure was subtle but relentless. Meanwhile, I was conducting my own inventory. The second phone had made her careless. She was texting Brady constantly now, often while sitting right next to me. Their conversations had evolved beyond sexual planning. They were discussing my inheritance, my business income, my daily schedule. Brady was asking detailed questions about my routines, my travel plans, my banking habits. They weren't just having an affair. They were conducting reconnaissance. Thursday afternoon, I came home early and found her in my office. She was photographing documents from my desk drawer. Tax returns, investment statements, anything with account numbers. I watched from the hallway as she methodically documented my paperwork with her phone camera. When she finished, she carefully replaced everything exactly as she'd found it. Amateur hour. She didn't notice the small pieces of tape I'd placed on each document. Every single one had been disturbed. That night, I called Ashton. "They're accelerating. She's photographing financial documents now." "Any idea why the rush?" "Brady Vaughn, her affair partner. I think he's pushing her to move faster. Maybe he's got his own financial pressures. Or maybe they're planning to disappear together once she gets her hands on your inheritance." The thought had occurred to me. Brady lived in an expensive downtown loft that seemed beyond a marketing salary. His social media showed a lifestyle funded by optimism and credit cards. He needed money as much as she wanted it. "How long before they make their legal move?" I asked. "Based on this timeline, 2 weeks, maybe less. She's gathering intelligence now, but once she thinks she has everything mapped out, she'll file." Good. That gives me time for one final addition. Friday morning, I returned to First National. The safe deposit box needed one more document. I'd spent the previous evening creating something perfect. A detailed financial statement showing exactly where my inheritance was invested, which accounts held what amounts, and most importantly, a complete timeline proving every penny was separate property acquired after marriage through inheritance with no commingling of marital funds. Any competent attorney would recognize immediately that she had zero legal claim to this money. But the beautiful part was what else the document contained. A complete accounting of our joint marital assets. The total came to $47,000. Our house was rented. Our cars were financed. Our savings barely covered 6 months of expenses. After 4 years of marriage, if we divorced tomorrow, she'd walk away with roughly $23,500. No alimony since we both worked full-time. No house since we didn't own one. No significant assets since we'd been living essentially paycheck to paycheck. The inheritance she was chasing so desperately was completely untouchable. I sealed this document in a fresh envelope and placed it in the box alongside all the evidence of her affair. When she eventually discovered this box, she'd get 2 devastating revelations at once. Walking out of the bank that afternoon, I felt the satisfaction of someone who just set up an inevitable checkmate. She could see some of the pieces on the board, but she had no idea how they were actually positioned. That weekend, she ramped up the pressure significantly. "I've been thinking about that financial inventory we discussed," she said Saturday morning. "Maybe we should just rip the Band-Aid off and do it this week." "This week? That seems fast." "Well, the longer we wait, the more complicated it gets. And honestly, I'm excited about it. I think it'll bring us closer together." The performance was getting surreal. She was talking about financial intimacy while planning to steal my inheritance and leave me for another man. "Okay," I said. "How about Thursday? That gives us both time to gather everything." "Thursday's perfect." I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. She was probably calculating how quickly Wall and Associates could file papers once they had complete asset information. Sunday evening, I came home from a client meeting to find her on the phone in our bedroom. She was speaking quietly, but our house had thin walls. "Thursday, he's going to show me everything," she was saying. "Bank accounts, investments, the whole picture. Once I know exactly what we're dealing with, we can move forward with the filing." A pause then. "I know, Brady. I can't wait either. Just a few more days, and this will all be over." Another pause. "The lawyer said once we have proof of the asset values, the divorce should be straightforward, especially with the adultery angle working in our favor." I nearly laughed out loud. She thought she was going to claim adultery against me. The projection was stunning. That night, as she slept peacefully beside me, probably dreaming about her new life with Brady funded by my inheritance, I made the final entry in my evidence log. Date, time, detailed account of the conversation, including her plan to file false adultery charges. Thursday was going to be very interesting. Thursday arrived like Christmas morning for her. She was up early, dressed in her best business attire, acting like today was some kind of celebration. Over coffee, she kept checking her phone and smiling at messages that were obviously from Brady. "Ready for our big financial planning session?" she asked, practically bouncing. "Looking forward to it," I said. And I genuinely was. At 10 a.m., her attorney called. Nancy Atkinson introduced herself as a specialist in marital asset protection and said she'd be joining us for the bank visit to ensure everything was properly documented. "For both our protections," my wife explained after hanging up. "Nancy says it's standard procedure." I nodded like this made perfect sense. Smart thinking. What she didn't know was that I'd already called Ashton. He'd be arriving at the bank 30 minutes after us, ostensibly for unrelated business, just in case things got interesting. We met Nancy at First National. She was exactly what I expected. Sharp suit, leather portfolio, the kind of smile that probably cost $300 an hour. She shook my hand firmly and thanked me for being so cooperative. "It's refreshing to see spouses who prioritize transparency," she said. The irony was suffocating. Inside the bank, I requested access to my safe deposit box. The manager led us to the vault area. My wife was practically vibrating with excitement as we walked down the hall. "I have to admit, I'm curious what you keep in here," she said, squeezing my arm affectionately. "Just important documents," I replied. "You'll see everything." The manager inserted the bank's key. I inserted mine. The box slid out of the wall, larger than most people expected, about the size of a briefcase. "Here we go," I said, lifting it to the table. "Everything important is in here." My wife positioned herself directly across from me, Nancy standing beside her with phone ready to photograph whatever we'd find. They were both leaning forward, eager to catalog my inheritance documentation. I lifted the lid. The first thing visible was a manila envelope labeled "Financial Timeline" in my handwriting. My wife's eyes locked onto it immediately. "Perfect," Nancy said, reaching for it. "Let's start with the asset documentation." "Actually," I said, moving that envelope aside, "let's start with this one." I pulled out a thicker envelope from underneath, labeled simply "Evidence." My wife's smile faltered. "Evidence of what?" "Your affair with Brady Vaughn. The temperature in that small room seemed to drop 20 degrees. I opened the envelope and spread the contents across the table. Printed text messages, hotel receipts, photographs of them together, credit card statements showing charges to restaurants, and gifts I'd never benefited from. Nancy immediately stepped back from the table like the documents might bite her. My wife stared at the evidence, her mouth opening and closing without sound. 3 months, I said conversationally. September through November, still ongoing as of last week. Room 247 at the Hampton Inn every Tuesday. Brady's apartment every Friday when you tell me you're working late. Nancy found her voice first. This is not what we came here for. But it is exactly what you came here for, I said. Asset protection, right? Well, these documents protect my assets very effectively. I pulled out another envelope. This one contains evidence of your attempts to access my inheritance through fraud and manipulation, including the conversation I recorded Sunday night where you discussed filing false adultery charges against me. My wife finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. You recorded me? Single-party consent state, I replied. Perfectly legal, just like photographing hotel receipts you left in your purse. Nancy was backing toward the door. I cannot be party to this. This meeting is over. Wait, I said, pulling out the final envelope. Don't you want to see the actual financial documents you came for? I opened the financial timeline and spread it across the table over the affair evidence. Here's my inheritance. $500,000 acquired after our marriage through inheritance. 0 commingling with marital assets. Completely separate property under state law. 0 claim available to her. Nancy stopped retreating and stared at the documents. And here, I continued, is our marital assets summary. Total value, $47,000. Her 50% share if we divorce, $23,500. My wife was still staring at the photographs of her and Brady. How long have you known? Since the first week. I've been documenting everything since then. Why didn't you just confront me? Because I wanted to see how far you'd take it. Turns out pretty far. Fraud, perjury, theft by deception. All documented. Nancy had found her lawyer voice again. My client will need time to process this information. Your client will need a new lawyer, I said. I imagine representing someone who just attempted fraud in front of witnesses isn't great for your reputation. This is entrapment. This is evidence collection. Big difference. I closed the safe deposit box and locked it. The divorce papers will be filed Monday morning. She can respond through whatever legal representation she can afford on $23,500. Walking out of that bank, leaving both women sitting in stunned silence in the vault room, felt like the end of a very long, very complicated game. The trap had worked perfectly. She demanded to see what was in the safe deposit box, convinced it contained my inheritance. Instead, she'd found something much more valuable to me and much more dangerous to her, the truth. I drove home alone that afternoon. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I already had 3 missed calls from Brady Vaughn. The 4th call came while I was sitting in my kitchen drinking coffee. We need to talk, Brady said when I answered. Do we? Look, this doesn't have to get ugly. We can work something out. I almost laughed. What kind of something? She made mistakes, okay? But divorces don't have to be nuclear warfare. You could be reasonable about this. Reasonable? Like paying for hotel rooms where you two plan to steal my inheritance? Silence on the other end. Here's the thing, Brady. I have photos of you two at restaurants charged to my credit card. I have text messages where you coached her on accessing my bank accounts. I have evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. You can't prove conspiracy. Actually, I can. She photographed my financial documents in my home office last week. You were asking specific questions about my banking routines in your texts. That's not an affair anymore. That's criminal planning. Another silence, longer this time. What do you want? Nothing from you. But you should know that if she involves you in any legal proceedings against me, I'll be happy to share everything with the district attorney's office. I hung up before he could respond. 2 hours later, she came home. Her face was blotchy from crying, her makeup ruined, her confident morning demeanor completely shattered. She found me reading in the living room and stood in the doorway like she was afraid to enter her own house. Can we talk? I marked my page and looked up. Sure. She sat on the edge of the couch, as far from me as possible while still being in the same room. I'm sorry. For which part? The affair, the attempted theft, or the plan to file false charges against me? All of it. Her voice was barely audible. I know how this looks. It doesn't look like anything. It is what it is. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Things just got complicated. I closed my book and gave her my full attention. Complicated how? You started sleeping with Brady in September. By October, you were planning to divorce me and take my inheritance. That seems pretty straightforward. The money wasn't the point. The text messages suggest otherwise. She wiped her eyes with tissues that were already soggy. I know you think I'm just some gold-digging cheater, but it wasn't like that. Then what was it like? I felt invisible in this marriage. You work all the time. You never talk about your feelings. You keep everything to yourself. When Brady started paying attention to me, it felt like someone finally saw me. I nodded thoughtfully. So you decided to see him naked in hotel rooms twice a week. It's not funny. You're right. It's not funny. It's expensive. Do you know how much those hotel rooms cost? The dinners you charged to our joint account? The gifts you bought him with my money? I was going to pay it back. With what money? Your salary barely covers your car payment and credit card minimums. She stared at her hands, probably realizing I knew a lot more about our financial situation than she'd assumed. What happens now? She asked. Ashton files divorce papers Monday morning. You'll be served probably Tuesday. After that, it's just paperwork. What about the house? It's a rental. Lease expires in 3 months anyway. My car? In your name. Keep it. The savings account gets split 50-50 like I showed you today. You'll get about $12,000. She looked up sharply. $12,000? That's it? That's your half of our marital assets. Did you think there was more? What about your business income, your investment accounts? My business income varies month to month. No alimony calculation available. The investment accounts contain my inheritance, which is separate property. The reality was settling in now. She'd blown up her marriage for an affair with a man who couldn't afford his own lifestyle. And her share of the aftermath was barely enough to cover a security deposit on a decent apartment. This is insane, she said, standing up suddenly. 4 years of marriage and I get $12,000? You get $12,000 plus whatever Brady's willing to contribute to your fresh start together. Her face went even paler. How do you know about that? The text messages where you two discussed moving in together once my inheritance was available. Those were particularly interesting. She sat back down harder this time. Nancy says I should fight this, contest the divorce, challenge the inheritance status, demand proper alimony. Nancy should probably worry about her own legal problems. What do you mean? She participated in attempted fraud today. She knew you were lying about the purpose of accessing my safe deposit box. She could face professional sanctions. I reopened my book, signaling the conversation was over. Where am I supposed to go? She asked. I hear Brady has a nice loft downtown. Expensive rent, but I'm sure you two can figure something out. We're not. Not what? Not planning to move in together? Not discussing my inheritance in your text conversations? Not meeting twice a week for the past 3 months? She didn't answer. I'll be staying at a hotel this weekend, I said. That should give you time to pack and figure out your next move. The divorce papers will spell out the timeline for everything else. That evening, I checked into a Hampton Inn across town. Not the one she and Brady used, but close enough to appreciate the irony. I ordered room service and spent the night reviewing financial documents, making sure everything was properly organized for the legal proceedings ahead. Around 9 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from her. This isn't over. I smiled and typed back. Yes, it is. Because it was over. The marriage, the lies, the manipulation, all of it. She'd played a game where she thought she knew the rules and discovered too late that I'd been playing an entirely different game the whole time. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. She tried to fight it initially, found a new lawyer after Nancy Atkinson quietly withdrew from the case, demanded mediation, contested the inheritance status, even attempted to claim emotional distress damages. None of it worked. The evidence I'd collected was too thorough, too well documented, too damaging. Her new attorney took one look at the affair documentation and the recorded conversations about fraud, then strongly advised her to accept the settlement offer. $12,000, no alimony, no claim to the inheritance, no contest. She signed the papers on a Friday afternoon in March. Brady had disappeared from her life sometime around January, right about when she could no longer afford to split the rent on his expensive loft. Funny how quickly romance fades when the financial benefits evaporate. Last I heard, she was sharing a studio apartment with a roommate and working double shifts to cover her bills. The marketing firm had quietly let her go. Something about restructuring. Though I suspected they'd discovered her relationship with Brady had created workplace complications. As for me, I bought a house. Nothing extravagant, just a solid 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood with a good school district. The inheritance stayed invested, growing steadily, while I rebuilt my life exactly the way I wanted it. No joint accounts, no shared finances, no one questioning my decisions or plotting behind my back. The safe deposit box at First National still held all the evidence, though I'd never need it again. Sometimes I thought about closing it, but decided to keep it as a reminder, not of her betrayal, but of my own capability to handle betrayal strategically rather than emotionally. Last month, I ran into her at a grocery store downtown. She looked tired, older, like someone who'd learned that choices have consequences. We nodded politely, said nothing, and went our separate ways. Walking to my car that day, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete peace. No anxiety about hidden agendas. No wondering what someone was really thinking. No checking my accounts for unauthorized charges. Just the simple satisfaction of a life built on my own terms, protected by my own decisions, and funded by an inheritance that remained exactly where my grandfather intended it to be. In my hands alone. When trust breaks, the only real defense you have is clarity. Not anger, not revenge, just the clear-eyed ability to see what's really happening and act accordingly. Some people mistake kindness for weakness, patience for ignorance. They learn eventually that the quietest person in the room is often the one who sees everything. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.